really amazing to see him work a program every day and um, helping other alcoholics. I think it's really beautiful when someone that has a good amount of time helps someone that's new but still remains teachable. And I think he's a great example of that. So, Stanley. Thanks, you.
Morning, Stanley Alcoholic. Um, um, yeah, thank you, Jules, for that. Um, yeah, I haven't spoke here in a little bit, or even like spoke anywhere in general, and it seems like a little bit. So it's gonna be good to revisit everything and kind of start from the beginning. Um, yeah, for me, I whenever I tell my story, I always kind of lean in on how alienated I felt from everything and everybody and from like my peers, my friends. I'm talking like when I'm a child. Um and I was kind of like I was praying this morning and thinking about it, kind of reflecting on it. And I don't really know if that's unique to me as an alcoholic. I think that's part of my disease, to think that I'm unique in some way, and to think that the way that I feel is probably I'm the only person feeling that way. Um, and now the perspective that I've been given thanks to working this program is that I think a lot of kids just feel alienated in general, alcoholic or not. I think it's weird growing up and doing this life thing. Um, but I was, yeah, I was a kid that felt alienated, and my earliest memory from childhood is being hit in the head with a broom by my little brother. Um, and I remember being in the hospital and playing on one of those like rolly chairs as the doctor was talking to my mom about some stitches or something like that. And the whole room was like red. And I don't, that's my earliest memory, is seeing the whole room red. Um, and I don't know. My childhood is like that. I don't remember a lot of it, really. I have like little blotches here or there, even up to like my teenage years. Um, and it's thanks to this program that a lot of that has kind of been uncovered. And there's been a lot of they say in this program like more will be revealed. And that's been true for me every month and year that I've been in this program. Is a lot more has been revealed for me. And a lot of it, um a lot of it can be uncomfortable. I think I oftentimes when I'm shown the truth right away, I choose to uh, kind of brush it off. That's just part of my DNA, I think, is if I'm shown something heavy within myself or within the world, um, I choose to kind of just, let's gloss over that. Let's not really look into that right now. And I think that comes from growing up. That's how my family, that's how we dealt with things. Um, there weren't really any real conversations about, um, you know, again, I don't know if this is unique to me, but like, how you doing? How's things at school? How are you feeling in here? All those things. It was more so like everybody was kind of in survival mode since I was like a little kid. I was born in Great Falls, and then we moved back to the Blackfeet Reservation when I was around like 7, I think. Um, and from then on out, man, it felt like my whole house, it felt like the vibe was we just got to make it to the next paycheck, or we just got to make it to this point and then things will be okay. The issue was that point never came and things were never okay. At least that's what it felt like. It was like living in desperation. And so I grew up with that attitude where I lived desperately. Everything was all or nothing for me, you know? Every thought that came into my brain, I followed that to like really, really ridiculous places. Um, I couldn't differentiate like what was reality and what was just in my head. So I treated everything as if it was reality. And living like that, and that really what it is me going with whatever emotion and thought I have. It's led me to being pretty miserable and pretty scared. And this is before I started drinking. This is before I found something that kind of quieted that thing going on in my head, which was I was almost like a cat. And there'd be something fast moving, and I'm like, okay, maybe that's it. I'm gonna chase that. It wasn't voluntary for me. It was like instinctual for me to just follow anything and live in a desperate way. Um, and the addiction and alcoholic thing, nobody mentioned to me that there were alcoholics in my family growing up. Um, and I'm not resentful at that or like, I know when I tell people that like now they're like, nobody thought to mention to you that your uncle's been in AA for like 30 years and your grandma's been in AA for like 20 years and that your dad or your grandpa died of cirrhosis and that everybody on your other side committed suicide. Like we just didn't talk about those things. I didn't know what happened to my grandparents until like a year ago. Like really, I didn't actually know. It was like, kind of hearing vague things here or there, or like something slipping up when my mom or dad like arguing, but I really didn't know my family history. Um, and so yeah, people when I tell people that, they're like, well, why didn't they, are you, how do you feel about that? And I'm like, I don't know if it would have made a difference, really. You know, I don't know if those type of warnings would have done anything to deter me from eventually finding something that set me free, really, from what was going on within me. Um, and so, yeah, I grew up on the reservation, and I was pretty antisocial. I think. It's funny. I've talked with some people about my childhood, and my story does change often. I'm finding that the further I get along in this thing, um, kind of like I said when I was younger, I couldn't differentiate the true from the false, and more will be revealed. More has been revealed, and I'm often full of shit. That's at least what I find. Not like consciously. I just think what's beautiful about this program is the more I stick to it and the more I get involved, I get more perspective on things. And kind of that idea of, trying to remain teachable. I've gone through periods where, I think I got it all figured out. And then I get enough pain and I'm like, oh, if I haven't figured out, this sucks. Um, so so yeah, I did have friends growing up. And a lot of people did like me. I found out later, looking back. Um, People wanted to be my friend. But again, I cannot differentiate the true from the false. And I thought everybody hated me. I thought everybody thought I was weird. I thought I was unique. Um, and it wasn't until yeah, even in recent years, I'm like, maybe the reason like I didn't talk to people is because when people would talk to me, I would I would really come off like an asshole. Maybe I wasn't like approachable enough. And looking back, there's this memory where I broke my wrist when I was in high school, um, playing like a sport, and that was my first time getting a cast. And I was in Mr. Hecker's class, and it was biology. And I was sitting with there's a guy named Sean, Brittany, and then somebody else there. But I remember coming in with my cast, and I wanted to hide it, dude, because that's gonna draw attention to me, and I don't really like that. I don't like anybody perceiving me. And Brittany, they're asking me about it, and I was like, I don't know, whatever. I was trying to like really not talk about it. And she's like, "Can I sign your cast?" And that was like the scariest thing for me. I was like, and looking back now, I don't know why that was scary. I think I'm still figuring that out, but I think it's because I for me, any type of connection with another person like rouses up a lot of fear within me naturally. Um, and that's naturally who I am. Is any type of connection with another person, my whatever's within me starts firing off and I think danger. Um, and so I didn't say anything. And it got pretty awkward. And then Sean was my buddy. He's like, he doesn't want you to sign his cast. And I was like, ah. So that's kind of how I operated was, you know, I was in my self-imposed isolation a lot. Um, you know, I often like thinking that I'm the victim of my circumstances or of the way things are. Um, and I'm not saying that, life circumstances and the way we grow up is a lot of it is out of our control. But now, thankfully to this program, I'm given the perspective that I do have a way out of that perspective and I have a way to kind of move past all that. So I a lot of things happened, in my house. There was like drug addiction and alcoholism, and eventually I had to move off the reservation because that's what you do, or that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to die on the reservation. I didn't want to live there and my world be confined to, I don't know how big it is, that town, like probably like 10 by 10 miles. I don't know. It's small. But I didn't want that. I wanted, I had these grand ideas of, being in a band and having all these friends and going to parties and living what I thought I was missing out on. You know what I mean? And so I moved to Missoula and I'd done some like casual drinking and casual weed use, but it didn't really take a hold. It didn't really click for me. And so I got here and I had all these grand ideas of, okay, I'm going to get out of my shell. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to start passing my classes because I was a horrible student. I wanted to do like a 180 change of everything that had been going on in my life. And that's kind of what I do. I have these grand ideas, and it's often the complete opposite of what my life is. I don't want to just correct a little bit and incrementally do something. I want to radically change how I fucking feel. Um, and and the funny thing is I came here and I did the same thing. I didn't really connect with anybody. I went to college and looking back, people tried to connect with me, but I was still stuck in here thinking that everybody didn't like me or that I was unique in some way or that, a lot of me. A lot of that, a lot of not thinking about how anybody else is really feeling or what they got going on. I'm like, well, I feel weird, so I'm not gonna like talk to you. Um, or and I'm not really useful in that way. And how can I connect with anybody if I'm just concerned about what's going on with me? Um, and so yeah, I eventually got into a relationship. And that was my first real relationship in college, and it was a little bit before COVID happened. And we started, so growing up, that my parents didn't tell me real alcoholism. My dad was like, just don't drink. That was his like advice. That was, well, his advice was really like, don't knock anybody up and don't drink. Uh, and I got that advice from like 6 years old. That was like his baseline thing was that. Like that was the kind of like connection that we had was his advice was don't fuck it up. And so yeah, we started drinking because it was COVID and I remember her saying, hey, let's get a bottle of wine. And I remembered my dad saying, don't drink. Um, And for me, I did associate like alcohol, like real alcohol use, like real drinking with the homeless people that I saw in Browning. Because a lot like every time I always wondered that. So this is a little side, but whenever we'd be driving around my mom or my dad, they really seemed to treat the homeless people really well. They would give them money or food or offer them a ride, or if we saw somebody like hiking off the res, my dad would be like looking back and like really wondering, and he'd often like turn around and like check on them or like pick them up. And it's because a lot of them were my relatives. Uh, you know? Um, and I didn't know that. So So that's what I associated alcoholism with was being homeless, that smelling like alcohol and not having showered. Not like disparaging any of that, but like that's what I associated it with. I didn't want to end up like that. I didn't want to end up on the street. I didn't want to end up that way. And so when she suggested, get some wine, because every time I drank, it was like, at like a work thing or like a party or like I worked at like a lot of the events around Missoula at a hot dog stand. That was like my gig. And so people buy you like beer at these things. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'll drink when people buy me beer. Um, and I got really scared when she mentioned that. Um, and looking back, really think what it was is I wasn't afraid of what was going to happen to me. I was afraid of what was going to happen to her. In the sense of I I need to have some sense of control of the people around me. That's what it is within me. Is yeah, I feel weird, but what I'm really afraid of is not being in control of you and how you perceive me and how you act around me. And that comes from my alcoholism. It also comes from the way I grew up. My dad was a very controlling person, my mom and us, that thing I said about don't knock anybody up, don't get anybody, don't drink. That seeped into everything in our household. It was his way, or we heard about it, and it was often pretty violent. And so I didn't know how to live. I talk about that alienation thing. I think a big part of that too was I didn't know how to handle somebody having their own autonomy because my dad showed me that that was an unsafe thing. It's safe for people to have autonomy in relationships. And that now I'm able to like look at that and truly see that and not be ashamed of it because of this program. You know, this will be like a little aside, but the steps, what they've really taught me is the things that I don't really want to look at. You know how I said I kind of sweep things under the rug or let's not talk about that? This program's taught me that that's really where my freedom comes from, is looking at those things within myself that I'm ashamed of or that I'm afraid of. I don't like that. That's an icky idea that, you know, I don't like people's autonomy within our relationship. That's, on the outside, that's kind of psychotic. Because it is. It is. Um, but I'm able to look at that not because I'm an altruistic person and, whatever, but because this program has taught me and really letting a higher power in has taught me that that's where my misery comes from, is holding on to those things and those ways of living that I don't even know if it's a conscious thing. I could be like, well, that keeps me safe, but really what it is it's just my innate, it's my innate instinct. They often talk about how our instincts are off base coming into this thing. And I found that a majority of my instincts coming into this thing have been off base. And they didn't all turn right away just because I went through the steps. That's been a continual process. And so that idea of like me letting go in a relationship, that's pretty new for me within, the past few years. That's really new. And it's still not completely, I'm still not really comfortable with it, truly. But thanks to this program, I'm able to work through that. And thank God I'm able to work through that because the people around me, they benefit from it, you know? Even if there's fear within me, I'm learning that whatever I'm feeling on the inside, yeah, it does matter, but I often am not totally clear on what I'm feeling. And it's often based off of a fear, at least in those extreme examples. So anyway, started drinking and long story short, I ended up here. Um, that's a really long story short. It got really, really bad. It got really, really bad. Um, and I treated people horribly and I did things that I never thought I would tell another human when I was drinking. And even when I wasn't drinking, because for me, my alcoholism doesn't stop and end when I pick up that first drink. My alcoholism is constant. It's a consistent thing. And so what that looked like for me is, I would get drunk and have more than I wanted to. When people were going to bed, I'd often be the guy up with like 2 bottles of wine in the living room drinking. until like 3 or 4 a.m. Because that's when I was just getting started. Like, why are we stopping this now? Like, it's just starting to feel good. Like, things are just starting to get good within here. It was pretty sad on the outside, but within here, I was feeling freedom. That's what alcohol gave to me was a sense of freedom from the back and forth in my head of all these things and me overthinking. Um, and that freedom that I got from alcohol, it was like almost like a fresh, it was like it was almost like I could finally breathe, and whatever was really weighing me down, I was able to brush it off almost. But you know what, man? Like, it's fine. And it really did feel fine. That was kind of the beauty of alcohol for me, was it really did feel fine. Um, the issue is that window of serenity or faux serenity that I was getting slowly started getting to the point to where um I felt like it was going to be there, but it really never came again. And what it was replaced by was the depression and anxiety and fear and hate. All those things that I was trying to get rid of were exasperated when I drank now. But I couldn't stop because I was still focused on that time I felt really, really good, or that I didn't feel that way when I drank. And I think that's what they call the obsession of the mind, is I will obsess over almost the idea of something, and that's not based in any reality. Um, and so I had the obsession of the mind, and that triggered a craving for me every time I drank. Where when I started, um, I didn't know how many I would have. Like I could have maybe one or two sometimes, like once or twice. And I remember what I got from that was a sense of accomplishment of like, wow, I didn't, that's like a normal person. That's like somebody having like a glass of wine at dinner. Like I'm kind of normal. But then I would immediately be like, I can't wait. I can't wait to do it again. Like, okay, that's like two, but that's like the start of me actually drinking either that night or a week down the road. That's not me actually drinking. That's not anything. That's just me proving to myself that I can have one or two and be a gentleman. Um, and so yeah, going back to it, I ended up she ended up leaving. Job was going down the going down. I didn't have any money. Um, I was like 240 pounds. Uh, my diabetes was out of control. My house was a mess. And yeah, even talking about those things, like those things have happened in sobriety. Um, and so, those were the outside things that were happening, but what was really going on was on the inside. I felt hopeless. Um, I really did feel I felt that. I felt hopeless and I felt like a complete failure. Um, and I felt weird and I felt disconnected and I felt like I just couldn't get this life thing under control. Um, and it was at that point where, before that I'd never gone to AA. I swore I would never, not swore, I was never like, I'm never going to AA, but I was like, that's weird. I'm not gonna go to AA, you know? Like that's really what it was like, that's not gonna help. Like sitting in a room with a bunch of people that can't drink. Like like that sounds like fucking horrible and miserable. That's what I thought, man. I was like, that sounds like the bottom of the barrel. Not knowing that I was like beyond the bottom of the barrel. Kind of judging from down there, being like, you guys are fucking losers. Um, and that's kind of who I am. I have a huge ego. I will judge from the bottom to the people that are kind of anyway, but I tried counseling. I tried limiting my drinks. Well, I didn't, my brother did. Um, yeah, we ended up, this is when my alcohol got me, because we ended up moving in with my brother and his wife, and it was their job because she was over it. She was like, I can't do anything with this guy. You guys take it. And so it was their job to keep me sober and really to keep me from killing myself. Because at that point, that's where my alcoholism got me was every time I drink, all those feelings came in. But really, it was Stanley's gonna kill himself. That's where my alcoholism got me, you know. Um, and so yeah, I we tried limiting my drinks and all that stuff, and nothing worked. And then everything fell apart. And then I was like, what do people do? Like every rehab story I had heard, it didn't work. You know, all my like my sister, both of my sisters, so I have two half sisters. They both went to rehab for drug addiction and alcoholism. They were both addicted to meth and heroin. Um, and they both ended up dying from those addictions. But they both went to treatment, and a lot of my cousins went to treatment. A lot of my classmates went to treatment, and I'd heard of maybe one dude out of all those stories getting sober for I think 4 years, and now he's in prison. Um, because he ended up getting back on meth and drinking. That's what it is. You know, that was my experience with it. But I was desperate. So I was like, okay, people in movies do it. It works for them. So I'm gonna do it. Um, so I called a treatment center and I was in a was it is Rimrock a treatment center? I think that's yeah, I called Rimrock. Um, and I think so. It's in Helena or Billings or something like that. Billings. Okay, cool. I must have been that one then. So I called them and I was like, hey man, I just need help and I'll do anything. And the lady was really, really nice. And she was really, really nice, man. She was like, yeah, we got you. Like, don't worry about it. You're gonna be okay. We have a bed 6 months down the road. Uh and I've told this before, but I remember hearing that and I remember it being like um being told that's like being told I'm gonna die, essentially. That's what it felt like. It felt like, okay, I'm probably gonna drink again, man. And now that I don't have anything to kind of save me, she's gone. They kicked me out. I don't have a job. I don't have anybody, you know. Who am I gonna like use? Really is what it was. Who am I gonna use to kind of feel bad for me so that I don't kill myself? Um, and there I was like, oh my God. And then the next word out of her mouth, next words were, this is you're gonna get a call from a 406 number. And it's gonna be somebody that can help you. Just answer it. And I was like, okay, okay. And and then like, yeah, 20 minutes later, this guy called me from Bozeman, and his name was I don't remember his name. That's one man. I wish I knew that guy's name. I really do, because that dude saved my life. And we often hear about the stories of like this saved my life. That dude saved my life because when he got on the phone, he talked calm and he didn't tell me how great his life was. He told me what happened and what it was like. And then he told me, I don't live like that anymore. And I'm okay. And I don't think about her, because he was telling me stories about relationships. I was like, oh my God, this guy's like fucked up like me. And he was like, now I have a wife and a few kids, and it's been like 15 or 20 years since any of that happened. And I don't feel those things anymore that he just told me about. And and I believed him. I truly believed what he was telling me was real, that he actually felt that way. And I don't know why. But they say it in the book. It's like there's I don't remember the exact wording, but it's essentially like the when we're in recovery and we're wanting to get this thing, we speak the language of the heart. Um, and I think he was speaking the language of the heart that day. And luckily, my heart was in a place where I was open to it. And that place was I was in a lot of pain. Um, Self-imposed pain, by the way. That's all my own doing. Um, So anyway, ended up getting in touch. He was in Bozeman, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna die because he's in Bozeman. I can't get to this guy. And he was like, hold on. You're gonna get a number. You're gonna get a call from 406 number. Just answer it. I was like, okay, this seems to be working. I'm gonna keep picking up the phone, man. This seems to be working. And then this other guy called me and he wasn't as like warm. His attitude was essentially like, yeah, I don't care how you feel, just meet me at the zoo group. That was it. It wasn't like, the other guy was like, oh yeah, this, and like that. This guy was like, okay, just meet me here and we're gonna go to a meeting. I was like, okay, let's do it. And then I didn't walk. I rode my bike to Front Street in front of the zoo group. And then this guy with glasses, kind of like a big nose, and he didn't look like anybody I'd hang out with. Not because I thought he was a loser, but because I was intimidated by him. He looked put together, you know? He looked like he didn't look like this or like he was scared. He was just a dude just standing there. And waiting to meet a stranger. And here I am. I'm like, what's gonna happen, man? What's gonna happen? Um, that was my sponsor, Michael. And he walked me into the zoo group and Darren was there and Frank and uh, this old like fighter pilot guy, I forget his name. Al. Al was there. And Danny was there and Chris and Scott, Sean and Trevor. All these guys were there. And I thought Darren was the leader of all of them. Because he was sitting up there chairing that day, and he seemed to know what he was doing, not knowing that he was just reading off of this thing. But anyway, yeah, they had a first step meeting, and everybody looked at me and talked to me, and it was the first time in my life where I wasn't afraid. You remember I told you that girl wanted to sign my cast, and I felt like that was the end of the world because I was being looked at. Uh, I didn't feel like that when you guys were looking at me. I felt like I felt love, I think, and I felt that language of the heart. I didn't feel like you guys were separate from me in any way. I felt like one of you guys, you know? That's kind of what we alcoholics do in recovery. It's really cool is I'm finding that at least alcoholics that I've encountered is we're pretty warm and welcoming people and we're pretty eager to let people in when we're working a program. And thankfully, a lot of those people in that room were working a program that day. I think about that sometimes at first step meetings where sometimes somebody will come in and everybody will share about how miserable they are, and how they don't drink no matter what, despite the misery. Which is true. That is a part of, that happens. It's not perfect. Um, but my experience has been life has been infinitely better without alcohol in my system, and with God in a program. I don't live in misery. Uh, yeah. But anyway, so yeah, I got in there and then people talked to me afterward, and this one dude was like, dude, just stick with it. Like you got it. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna be okay, not knowing that he was like a day sober. And this other lady was like, it's gonna be really good. And she was like 5 days sober, I think. Her name was Tara. Um, and it doesn't matter how sober we are, man. That's fucking real. Like how many years we got or how much time we got. Like that levity and that like whatever it is, that's the opposite of me when I'm drinking. I think that's God. And I don't think that's controllable. I think that just comes from being in the right place, which for me is in these rooms and with other alcoholics. Um, so yeah, I started doing the steps, kinda. I met with Mr. Michael. And then I had another sponsor at that time too, Major. He appointed me as a sponsee. Um, and yeah, he really, really, everybody really, really helped me, man. Earlier on, that was like I don't really know, and I hope that others are able to experience that in early sobriety of the love of AA and the fellowship. Because I think I really, really lucked out. Again, me thinking I'm unique. Everybody's probably gone through that, but um, I I would not be here, not just physically here, but here, present in my life for the things that are in my life now, which are all beautiful. If it weren't for you guys, and I say you guys, the fellowship of AA, you know what I mean? And you guys, like I see a lot of you, I know a lot of you. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you guys. That's genuinely how it is. Um, I was reading a little bit in the book this morning of A Vision for You, and it says, excuse me, um, I needed a sufficient substitute for what was working, and it wasn't working. Like, it was my perception of it working, which was alcohol and me doing the things that would make me feel good in the moment. You know, me. And the substitute has been the fellowship. And they talk about the three legacies like unity, service, and recovery. In my brain, I find that I often like separate the three, not intentionally, but I'm like, okay, yeah, these are all the things I got to hit. I got this. I got to hang out with people, talk to other alcoholics. I got to do my service work. I got to do something for fun and for free. And that doesn't benefit me at all, which usually involves AA. And then recovery. I got to do these steps. I got to take somebody through the steps. I got to do those things. And the funny thing is, that's all the fellowship. AA does not exist with the fellowship. These steps wouldn't mean shit if we weren't in here together. It wouldn't mean anything if we weren't working together as one alcoholic with another. So that's truly why I'm here is the fellowship. It's not because of my work in this program, it's because of you guys. I had no part in me getting sober. Truly. I had no part in me staying sober. The only part that I had was riding my bike to the zoo group, you know? And the only part that I had was being desperate, not desperate, but like at that level to where I was open to picking up the phone. And that's not the last time I've been at that point. I have to get desperate to pick up the phone now. It's funny, man. I don't call a lot of people in AA anymore. At the first few years, I was calling everybody every day. You know what I mean? Now I'm like, oh, I'll hit a meeting. I'll do this. Or like if somebody calls me, I'm obviously I'm going to answer it. Um, Again, I'm speaking right now. This is like my experience now. And the reason I say it's the fellowship is because it's a reminder to me that I'm not here because of the work that I've done. I'm here because of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, bar none. That's it. That's it. And yeah, I was welcomed into the fellowship with open arms. People wanted to hang out with me. And the difference then from when I was a kid was I was open to it now. I just wasn't open to it when I was younger and I was a kid, but I was open now. And what that openness has led me to is a life that I can't even have imagined, you know? I remember Frank like pulling me aside after a meeting, and for me, I was like, oh my God, this is like the fucking shaman of AA. It's funny, like we're all flawed, you know, like that. The further I get along in this thing is like that's the beautiful thing about this program is none of us are doing it right. Because there is no right way. There's just doing our best. Well, I should say for me, there's no way for me to do it. I'm just doing my best. Um, but Frank was really integral to my sobriety, and I was walking up the stairs, and he was behind me. He was like, "Stanley, what are you at right now?" And I was like, "I think it was at like 2 months. It was like 60 days." And we got to the top of the stairs, and it was like sunset. And he was like, "I want you to imagine where do you want your life to be at in a year?" And in my head, I was like, "Well, I want a job and maybe a car." And I just don't want to drink anymore. Like I don't want to have that craving because I still had the craving at that point. you know. And he said, and then he said, it was really corny, but it worked. He said, your future is going to be so bright that you're going to need sunglasses. Because your thoughts now are undershooting where you'll actually be at in a year. And in a year, I did have all those things, but what I really had was I had a fellowship around me and I had freedom and I had some work in the steps and really I had a higher power. Thank God. Literally. Thank God. Um, and and so yeah, Frank was right. And the funny thing is every time you guys have talked to me about your experience and you guys have given me some hope, you're not full of shit. Um, a lot of the time. Uh, um, no, 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 no. It is true because it's the language of the heart. And so, yeah, I've been sober for a little bit and I've restarted my time for some outside issues. And I'll share just a tiny bit on that. That was really important for me to restart my time twice. I got 1 year twice. Um, not for alcohol, but for other things. And I know this is AA, but I will find any way to get one over on this thing. On anything. If I can get my way, I'll do it. And I'll find any kind of loophole to really any kind of loophole I can find to justify my actions. Well, I was being, I acted this way to him because he was being an asshole, you know? Well, that relationship just wasn't really working for me, so I ghosted him. I'm still an alcoholic, man. That's kind of who I am. And so when I restarted my time, that's when I really think the more will be revealed. I really think that's when that God consciousness started coming in more. And what that God consciousness was that you're full of shit, Stanley, and you need to get to a meeting and you need to remain teachable and you need to help other alcoholics because that's what this is. This is what we do. Yeah, they say, "Do you want what we have?" You do what we do. I thought it was showing up to a meeting and talking good and looking good. No, it's doing the stuff that I don't want to. I don't want to drive like an hour out to grab a dude or check in on this meeting or update the schedule. Sorry. I don't want to do that stuff. I don't want to meet with a guy. I got band practice. I got to play music. I'm tired from work. I don't want to like dedicate time to you guys. But that is what we do. We do it for fun and for free. And the funny thing is that's when I've gained the most serenity and levity in my life is when I'm doing things for fun and for free. Um, so so yeah, my life now is it's really, really good. And I need to call my sponsor more and I need to call you guys more. Because I think that's important. And one thing I'll touch on before we end is God. Um, for a while there, I gained the first year I gained I had some spiritual intoxication going on. I thought God was gonna I thought because I was feeling really good and things were going my way that God was good. And then when things weren't going my way, I was like, okay, maybe God's not good and I need to like take control of this thing. Um and I call it God, it's higher power or whatever. And now my relationship with my higher power is as long as I'm doing what you guys do, which is being of service to AA every day, um, the outcome is how it should be in every aspect of my life, not just within this program and not just within the things that I hope are going to happen. Everything that happens is as it should be. And I think I can have that perspective now because there's nothing like working with a dude that's struggling and new in this thing and hearing what he's got going on and having him call you and being like, "Hey, we talked about praying. How do you do that?" That's what it's about, man. Because when he asks me, "How do you pray?" I actually have to think about how I pray. And then it encourages me to pray. And I'm like, "Oh, wait, this is what those guys were talking about. Like that freedom isn't from what I thought it was. That freedom is freedom of the bondage of who I am or of what I think things should be. It's a perspective thing. That freedom is from my expectations. And so when I'm free from what Stanley wants or thinks he should have, I'm more open to the gifts that God puts in front of me. And there's a lot of gifts in front of me today. And that's not unique to me because I'm not unique. I'm just one of you. So that's all I got.
Getting better with